What's up, guys? So I'm going to do a little bit of a tier list update because obviously I made a list before the ban list, and then I dropped the list that I made before the ban list after the ban list. So this is what I think will be great for YCS Dortmund. To start off with Unchained. Unchained is the best deck. I didn't think it was before. I thought it was good, but not the best. But the reason why I think it is definitely the best now is just because of Thrust. The ability to main deck Thrust and synergy with this deck is just really, really hard to deal with. And I think that carries in a lot of matchups where you can't hand trap or interact with them because they just punish you for it. Then on top of that, the baseline of the deck is very, very good. Flunderies, in terms of performance, is performing around tier 1.5, but in terms of actual strength, I think it's tier 2. It's still got the same problems as before, but this is a really good example of a format where the top deck is hard countered by another. The Flunder matchup is just so free. The Unchained matchup is so free for Flunder that it's like you just win a lot of games as a Flunder player when you come up against Unchained players, unless they have a specific answer to you, which is really, really good. Then Flunder also has a lot of unfair win cons in other matchups. Shifter is going to be good because Cash is gone, so now this is one of the best Shifter decks. You've got Featherstorm. Featherstorm is an unfair card, which also has synergy with Thrust. And then the Flunder engine is also very good at kind of solidifying a win. Some people think it's hard to close out a game with Flunder, but the thing about Flunder is you don't actually need to close out a game most of the time. Most of the time, you can just keep controlling your opponent will never get back in because you can do things like rise a loop or keep summoning AVN and just stop them from ever being able to interact with the game. They can't even like get a new card from their deck because you keep stacking dead cards to the top of their deck. So I do think Flunder is really, really good. It's a good pick. So again, I'd say it's tier 1.5, but I would say that its actual power level is tier 2, but I still think it's a really good pick. Rescue Ace also I think is like mid tier 2. I think it's a good deck. I think it's a very skill intensive deck. I think it's a deck that does not have power levels close to most of the top decks, but it has the ability to be more flexible than every other deck in the format, and it doesn't hard lose to anything. And I think that's always something to look at. Like when a deck doesn't have anything that directly hard counters it, it's always a good choice in a format because it means you can go into a wide field like we have now where there's loads of decks and not have to worry that this matchup just shuts me out of the game. So Rescue is really, really good deck, but somewhere in tier 2. Bestial Dragon Link, like I said before, is crap. Chimera, I don't like Chimera, and so I keep bouncing it around. I'll leave it in tier 1.5. I don't know. I haven't seen the representation to call it this as well. Actually, no, I won't. I changed my mind. I'm going to put it at the bottom of tier 2 just because it hasn't even got the representation. I've seen it do well at regionals, but this is a deck similar to Vanquish Show in my opinion that it's just not enough. There's not enough in the deck right now. The core of the deck is very mediocre. It does draw a lot of cards and get a lot of resources, but that is not enough. It won't win you every game. And if you come up against a deck with a real engine and they can interact with, they can get out around your back row and stuff. One of the things about the Chimera matchup you'll find is just side in Lightning Storms. Destroy their back row so they can't fuse on your turn anymore, and they lose most of the things they can do that are relevant. But yeah, I don't think the deck is that good. I think it's okay. I think it's playable, but I would actually rather play Branded. And to that, I would actually say Branded is tier 1.5. I think pure Branded, not Chimera Branded, is very, very good. It was still good last format. Gimmick Puppet is still a thing that people have forgotten about, and most people aren't playing around or running counters to Gimmick Puppet because they're not expecting it. And the deck just puts in so much work. One of the nice things about Branded, I would say, that makes it especially frustrating is that it's a deck that can change how it plays and change its win cons depending on what's in the format. You can put different cards to tutor out of the deck with Albion the Sanctifier Dragon. You can go more of a big untargetable fusion route with Sanctifier and Dragoon, or you can go for more interaction with Drags to Pelia and tier names and things like that. I think that gives the deck a lot of potential. So I think Branded is actually really good. And I think similar to Flunder, we could see a Branded in the final or a Branded win soon enough. Just because it is actually a really good deck and I think people aren't respecting it. Dark World as well. So Dark World, look, my sneak my sneak in to the high tiers this moment is going to be Dark World. I think Dark World is hugely underrated at the moment. I think if there was ever a YCS to play Dark World at, this would be the YCS. I would probably play Rescue if I was going Dortmund, but there's a big chance I would also play Dark World. Look, guys, no one is main decking Droll. No one. Very few people are main decking Droll. Shifter is a lot less common. Dweller is a thing, but Dweller is no one's going to be blind making Dweller. It's not the norm. And Dark World does not lose to hand traps. It really doesn't. Your opponent just has to get lucky and hope they can ash you well. Their first ash matters. If their first ash doesn't completely stun you because you didn't kind of brick, you just FDK and win. And Dark World Dark Corridor is such an OP card. I mean, it just gives it really good ability to just destroy your opponent. I had a game that I might actually upload where my opponent had drawn their hand, but I hand loop them for 4 cards, 2 on my turn, 2 on their turn, without even searching, because that's how good this deck is. It's so incredible. I really feel like Dark World is an amazing deck. I think it's prime to do well in a format. If someone takes it, someone could easily top with this. I don't see it winning, but I could easily see this deck topping because it has a lot of potential, and it can main deck Lava Golem, which is really, really good right now. D-Link is going to bump down somewhere to mid tier 2. What always happens with D-Link after like a ban list or after like a major format change is that it goes down, then people slowly solve it and it creeps up over time. You always see this. So D-Link is probably going to go down a little bit just as people like readjust and refining their builds, then it'll creep up. Drytron is the worst Dark World right now. I think the disadvantage that Drytron has over Dark World is that Dark World has the ability to hand loop. Drytron does not, which means that Drytron will lose to side cards. And Chaos Max is good, by the way, but just the fact that your opponent can interact with that, whereas your opponent can't interact as easily with the Dark World hand looping you, makes Dark World a bit better, because your opponent's going to have Dark Ruler and talents and stuff like that. I do think Drytron's okay. I think it's better now that Kashtira is gone, but if I was going to play a hand loop FDK deck, it would 100% be Dark World. It would not be Drytron. Exosister is bad. Don't play this deck. The only thing that... So Exosister is basically boneless math mech, where the idea is that it has like a couple 1-card combos, not a couple, it has a 1-card combo that can kill you, and then it can play a bunch of hand traps, and then it can also play Shifter. Like, that's the deck in a nutshell, but it doesn't actually do anything good. Exorcist is trash, don't play it. Heroes is a better rogue deck, but it's still got the same problems that Heroes always has, then you spend too long. Same with Infernobles. I do think Infernobles is not terrible, but same problems that Infernoble will have. Less Shifter, but there are better combo decks to play than Infernoble, unfortunately. Now, okay, a lot of people are saying that we might see, so my opinion on Kashtira is that it's likely to stay somewhere in like mid to bottom of tier 2, and then maybe it might creep up if there's like a weird engine like Speedroid Cash comes up again or something like that. But the thing about Cash that like I think that Arise Heart was actually such a big threat, and that now that I know that they can't go into Arise Heart, it even changes how I play into Cash. A lot of the times before, when you were playing against Cash, you would interact with them in certain ways because you're scared of Arise Heart dropping and just winning the game, but that doesn't even happen anymore. So it means I can let them. A lot of times it's like, I don't care if you summon a Unicorn and a Fenrir. Like, what are you going to do? End on Zeus? Okay, you're like, do you get it? It's not a big deal. And because of that, I think Kashtira is not going to be as good as a lot of people are hyping it up to be. I do think Labyrinth... So look, Labyrinth has a unfavorable Unchained matchup. I do still think it's a tier 1 to tier 1.5 deck because it's a trap deck. And in a format where there's only one trap deck right now, you're always going to be at an advantage in an event, because what will happen is in an event, not everyone can prepare for you. Now, obviously, the Unchained matchups won't be great, but you're not only going to play against Unchained in an event. In an event where let's say you get all the way to the finals, you play 15 rounds, you'd play 5. Maybe in Swish you'd play like 3 or 4, and then maybe in Top Cut you'd play another 2 or 3. But it's like, even though that's a big proportion of the matchups, it's not so much that I think Labyrinth just like gets shut out. And Labyrinth doesn't auto lose to Unchained. I think the Labyrinth Unchained match is Unchained favored, but I would say it's like a 65-35, not like a 90-10. Do you get it? You still have a chance to Labyrinth play if you play it well, and also you can play things like Full Force Virus. You can make Dweller. So I do think Labyrinth is still a really good pick. Vanadium has not done anything, so I'm actually going to be really rude and try and get loads of people to comment by putting it in non-meta. Marincess, I don't know. Like, the Cyber Stacks, there's just not much to say about them. The thing about the Cyber Stacks is that... okay, you know what? Marincess does perform. One thing I will say to Marincess's credit... The thing is, I don't want to put everything in tier 2, but we are in a flat format, so actually I'll go ahead and do it. One of the things that I would say about Marincess that it does have is that, and I'm actually going to move Dark World down a bit and probably put it like here, like, yeah, around D-Link. So one thing about Marincess that I will say is that it does definitely perform. It's a good enough deck that it will pull out results because it's just so consistent, and what it does well. Unfortunately, that is not enough to win a game. Now, one thing Marincess does have, in addition to that though, is it is a deck that can make Dweller quite easily. So this might be the format we see Marincess like kind of turbo up a bit, because a deck that can make Dweller on top of having all the Cyber shenanigans is going to be quite good into Unchained. But yeah, somewhere there. And then the other Cyber decks, they're just mediocre. Nothing really to say about them. I guess actually Mathmech is significantly better than the others. Ignista's like middle of the pack. There's less Stroll, but unfortunately there's Kaiju's around because of Pearly. And speaking of Pearly, I think Pearly's another tier 1 deck. I think Pearly's amazing. I think the thing about Pearly, as much as I disliked that deck before, I think that it has an ability to play, so because of the discard mechanic of Pearly, of like kind of turning any card into your combo, it means that you can be more greedy with the text you play in the main deck. And then on top of that, it has just a lot of unfair ways to interact with the game. It has the Happiness OTK, which is good into a deck like Unchained. It has access to Zeus very easily, which is also good into Unchained, but it's good into other decks. It has Noir, which does shut out a lot of decks, and a lot of decks are going to have to play the barriers and stuff just to beat you as Pearly. There's also different ways you can play Pearly as well. So you can play it blind second, you can play it with like a Dark World engine, you can play it with a bit of Stoll cards, you can play it with loads of different discard engines, that like the Ishizu cards. I think Pearly has a lot of potential to do things. Basically, it has a lot of flexibility, and if I looked at the top tier decks, I would say that Unchained is definitely the stronger deck, but Pearly is, in my opinion, the more flexible one, and flexibility is everything in a tournament. Rika is, I don't know, somewhere tier 2. No one ever is going to read a Rika card, and so Rika will remain tier 2 forever. It will remain a tier deck until one person decides to read it. Runic is not performing at the moment, and so just because it's not performing, I'm going to put it right at the bottom of tier 2. I do think, and this is all Runic variants, I don't think Runic is bad, but it's not performing, and I'm not going to give it good results if it's not performing at all. Sprite, I actually think, is a tier 1.5 deck. I think people are sleeping on it a bit. Basically, it's because Unchained is like the better Sprite now, but I still think that Sprite is a really, really good deck, and I would say that one of the nice things about Sprite is that its ability to play into Nibiru, which is a card more people are playing now, is really going to come up. People are going to be main decking Nibiru just because of Unchained, and Sprite is a deck that just very easily plays around it. So yeah, good deck. Let's see what happens. Synchron is like a one to watch. I think it's better than Vanadium, but I don't think it's that good. Tier Elements is another, I would say, high tier 2, low 1.5 deck. So I've been saying for a while, and a lot of us have been saying for a while, but Cashier is the main thing holding tier out of the format, and I think this is the first event of the new ban list. If I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure the new ban list was like Monday or Sunday, and Dortmund is Saturday, so I'm pretty sure this is the first event, so this is going to be, we're going to see, is tier going to do something? One of the interesting things about tier as well is that I would say it's a deck that can't really play hand traps and back row, but it can play Dweller and it can play board break as well. Like, it can crack boards and play super poly, and that might be like the key, because I think we're actually in a format now where we go back to carry on copying pack and play more board breakers than hand traps because of thrust and talents and stuff. And so it'll be interesting to see how tier does, if it can really dominate Unchained. Vanquish Show is bad, and Virtual World is somewhere mid to low rogue. I think it has a bit of potential. I think when the Diable Star engine comes out, that's going to do a lot for Virtual World, but yeah, right now it's somewhere in like mid low rogue. So this is where I would tier everything. So let me know what you guys think. Good luck at Dortmund, and I'll have a hand trap list coming out soon as well. So yeah, talk to you all soon. Peace.